Greetings to you. My name is Aibo Makamadze, a student at Osiri University, enrolled on MBA in Sustainable Leadership. I'm going to share with you my scenario planning for migration futures in Zimbabwe toward 2063, in line with the African Union Agenda 2063. This is part of the partial fulfillment of the end of course business in a changing world requirements. And I did the scenario planning based on Jill Ringland's 8-step methodology. Migration has shaped Zimbabwe's socio-economic landscape for decades. And while it provides critical relief through remittances and diaspora knowledge transfer, migration also risks brain drain in vital sectors like healthcare, education, engineering, and technology. And the goal is to understand or to outline plausible futures and determine how policy can turn migration into a development opportunity for the nation. So the first step was looking at the focal issue. What is the issue here? And the question guiding my analysis was, how might migration patterns affecting Zimbabwe evolve by 2063, and what implications would these patterns have for brain circulation, economic development, labor markets, and public policy? The decision at this stage was to focus on both sides of migration, the dual nature of migration. On one side of migration is a relief mechanism providing remittances and skills acquisition. But on another hand, you also have migration as a challenge that is causing brain drain and talent loss, thereby compromising or weakening our institutions. I decided to incorporate also global conflict influences, looking at the war that is currently happening in Russia and Ukraine, where Zimbabwean foreigners are participating in this war and solely out of financial incentives. And also looking at the current wars, to look at Iran, US, and Israel wars and see how might this escalate in a way that will also affect migration, either people taking part in that war or people moving out of the war affected regions going back to their countries. And then step number two was looking at the local factors that shape migration, looking at the economic conditions, looking at the labor market shortages, diaspora networks, the emergence of the BPO, business processes organizations, and the digital economy. And the decision at this step was to include domestic opportunities as a key factor, showing how internal policy and sector development can positively influence migration. Step number three was looking at the macro forces, and here I'm examining external forces that influence migration, looking at the political factors, looking at the economic factors, the social factors, the technological factors, the environmental and the legal factors. Of particular interest to me is the legal forces, looking at immigration policies in countries like South Africa, the United Kingdom, and the United States, and other host nations, how this will affect the migration trends in Zimbabwe. The decision here was to capture broad global forces beyond Zimbabwe, including technological and environmental pressures, which interact with local conditions to shape migration outcomes. Step number four was now to look at the driving forces and ranking them. So after assessing all the factors, two stood out as both highly influential and highly uncertain. The first is Zimbabwe's long-term economic performance, and I was looking at this in terms of strong growth versus weak growth. And then the second is openness of international migration systems, and I was looking at this in terms of open versus restricted. These two factors I then selected as scenario axes, providing a structured way to explore plausible futures. So by crossing these axes, I created 4 scenarios. The first scenario is called the returning phoenix, and it explains a strong economy and open migration. So it's a combination of strong economy and open migration. And then the homeward bridge is a combination of strong economy and restricted migration. And then the spreading routes signify weak economy plus open migration. And fourthly, when we have weak economy and restricted migration, we're talking of a locked gate. So the decision here was to focus on combinations of economic performance and migration openness, as these define the key uncertainties shaping Zimbabwean migration outcomes. So now let's articulate the 4 scenarios, and that's step number 6. Returning phoenix. Zimbabwe undergoes significant economic transformation. Skilled professionals migrate temporarily, acquire knowledge abroad, and then return to strengthen the critical sectors. Diaspora engagement grows, brain circulation replaces brain drain, and remittances and investments fuel further development. That's scenario number 1. Scenario number 2 is Zimbabwe grows economically, but global borders are tight. Previously emigrated Zimbabweans return permanently, bringing skills, savings, and global experience. Critical sectors rapidly strengthen. So that's the homeward bridge. It allows people to come back and share their skills and plant investments in the economy. And then number 3, the spreading routes. The economy struggles while migration channels remain open. Skilled Zimbabweans continue to emigrate, diaspora communities expand, and remittances remain vital. Brain drain persists, though this is slightly or partially mitigated by the BPO and digital sectors. Number 4, the locked gate. This happens when Zimbabwe's economy is weak and global migration is restricted. Talent remains trapped domestically, unemployment rises, informal sectors expand, and brain circulation is minimal. Social pressures increase and giving rise to political tensions. So based on these scenarios, we come to step 7. Zimbabwe should develop structured diaspora engagement programs and invest in domestic opportunities, including BPO, digital services, manufacturing, mining, and agro-processing industries. Zimbabwe should also strengthen regional labor mobility through SADC. Monitor trends like remittances, youth unemployment, climate pressures, and digital economy growth. And to track which scenario is emerging, there is need for monitoring. And that's step number 8. And what should be monitored? Look at immigration policy changes in South Africa, UK, USA, and other host nations. Monitor diaspora investment and remittance flows, youth unemployment rates, domestic economic growth and sector expansion, climate-related migration pressures, growth of BPO and remote work opportunities. So here there is need to define measurable signals so as to allow proactive policy adjustments. In conclusion, migration will continue to shape Zimbabwe's development. By following Ringland's 8-step methodology, we can anticipate uncertainty, plan for multiple futures, and align strategies with African Union Agenda 2063. If Zimbabwe invests in domestic opportunities, engages the diaspora, and prepares for all 4 scenarios, migration can be transformed from a challenge into a driver of national development, brain circulation, and sustainable growth. Thank you for listening to this presentation, and I'm happy to engage should there be any need to do so. And I sign off. Thank you.